Connecting Communities. I'm your host, Nancy Bacci. We're fortunate today to have a representative from Cataldo Ambulance in attendance. Thank you so much for coming on. John Georges, we have you as Shift Commander and Clinical Field Supervisor for Cataldo Ambulance. Thank you for taking time out of what I'm sure is a busy, hectic day, as it is every day providing services to our city, to take time to come on and really share a lot of valuable information with our community members.
Oh, thank you for having me. And on behalf of Cataldo Ambulance Service, the owners, the leadership, you know, it's a privilege to be here and to connect with the communities on this show. And I think we have a lot of important things to talk about, and I'm very excited to be here to do that with you today.
Great. Why don't we start a little bit about your background and what drew you to this sort of work?
So I started in EMS at the age of 18. I did a high school EMT program in Lowell. And I worked a year up there for a 911 service and as a dispatcher. And then I subsequently moved to Boston, where I got on Boston EMS, which is a division of the Public Health Commission. I worked there for 10 years, and during that time, at about 25, I became a paramedic. And then I started working for Cataldo as an entry-level paramedic. And I rose up the ranks to become a shift commander and a clinical field supervisor. And during that time, and even as a child, I've always enjoyed and loved and been passionate about helping people, as do most of my colleagues. That's why we do the work that we do. And in rising up in those ranks at Cataldo, I left the city after about 10 years. And I've been with Cataldo since 2007. And like I said, I rose up as a paramedic into the clinical field supervisor shift command position. And I do a variety of different things for the service, our organization, our partners, our affiliates, and it's a great job to have. If you like helping people, if you like working with the community, the most vulnerable, people that are in need, you can really excel at Cataldo Ambulance because we have one of the largest ambulance services in the Commonwealth. And there's so many different areas and divisions that our company has. Training and education. We have a communications division that handles multiple 911 calls every day for over 15 communities, cities and towns across the Commonwealth in Metro Boston, north, going into Wellesley. We have our training and education department that does community outreach, CPR, AED programs. We have an EMT class. We've partnered with Bunker Hill Community College and have a paramedic program. We provide a lot of community support, not only for the city of Somerville, but we also have relationships with police and fire departments across the Commonwealth, where we do education, first responder training with them in high schools and middle schools, elementary schools. So we make 911 awareness and emergency awareness prevalent to those, so they learn young what to do in the event of an emergency.
I feel like this show could be several hours long. I mean, I like to think that I'm fairly well informed, and I wasn't aware of the breadth of services that are offered. So I think today we'll have to tighten the focus and really kind of spend some time on some of those areas. But I do know Cataldo has been here coming up on its 40th year providing service. Yeah,
we started, Diana and Bob Cataldo and their son Dennis started Cataldo Ambulance with 2 ambulances in the city in September of 1977, and this September will be our 40th anniversary providing services. And again, it was 2 ambulances that we started with. Now, 2017, we have contracts in 15 cities and towns and municipalities, multiple private service contracts where we help the sick and injured and do routine transport for those that require a stretcher transport. But we have over 180 vehicles on the road now, where we started with just 2.
Wow.
It's a very big accomplishment for the Cataldos, and our organization is ran and operated by Chief Operating Officer Ron Caranto, who does a fantastic job, and so does the other senior leadership and the directors and the rest of our management team in maintaining our growth. And we certainly have grown, and we're busting at the seams, and we work hard every day to maintain that.
I think it's important to mention as well, you know, when people hear Cataldo, ambulance, emergency services, I think any of those words really do have a perception that go along with them. So as we often hear in conversations with our first responders of police and fire, a lot of interactions with employees such as yourself are when bad things are happening. Right, so there is that sense of responding to an emergency. So I think it's really important to emphasize the community education components that exist as well. And we want people to see our ambulance service providers as community resources. It's not simply one of the attendees, you know, when a tragedy happens, that roll up to the scene and help to take care of you. They're providing all sorts of other services throughout the community that kind of happen a little bit more behind the scenes.
Absolutely, and you know what, that's a really good thing that you just mentioned, because a lot of people still have the perception that, you know, they see an ambulance, oh, that's just the ambulance drivers. They don't realize that the depth and training that our staff has, whether it's a chair car driver, an EMT, a paramedic, or even our communication specialists that answer multiple 911 calls every day. Like you mentioned, we could sit here and talk for hours about the various layers of services that we're able to provide. And we're very fortunate for that, because our organization has grown to be such a strong place to work, but its foundation was always solid.
Right.
And Cataldo's role in the city, again, with the community reaching out, we don't want people just to say, well, it's the worst day of our life, that's why we have to call 911. And in reality, it is, okay? But if someone was to go up to an ambulance that's posted in, you know, Magoon Square or Union Square and knock up and say, hey, I have a question about something, where can I get CPR training?
Right.
Where can I get choke saver training for my child? Our staff can give them guidance and directions, but we'll take the minute to get out and talk to them, just like a community police officer would. If it's something public health driven, we're happy to provide those answers to questions people may have in the services that what we may do. It's not just emergency services.
Right.
We have a ton of things we could offer the community.
I think it's important to note as well, several things struck me while you were talking. One, when you're responding to a call, and as we all know, even though people use the language of routine call, there are no routine calls because you never know what may evolve at a scene. The reality is, if you're responding to your fourth incident of a person down, for the people involved with that, it's the only time it's happened to them, or it is the most critical thing. So I think it's so important when you think of the staffing that responds to incidences such as this, the skill set that's really required. You know, I was really intrigued when you were talking about how at a young man of 18, you know, you had already started the path that led you here, because it is a particular level of compassion required, the ability to develop empathy in a split second with someone, and to treat each person with the dignity and respect that's required of these situations without becoming like, oh, it's just another fill in the blank. So, I mean, understanding that level of impact you can have on community members, I think can't be emphasized enough. For what is the next call or the 10th call that day, for the people involved, as you say, it's the most critical thing that's happening to them. And the experience they have with you has a ripple effect regarding their ability to seek services in the future. If they feel they were treated in a respectful and dignified manner, they're certainly much more likely to engage if a situation arises again, and to realize that you are there providing a valuable service that encompasses a lot of things. You know what I mean? Your treatment of others is so critical in this role.
You know, that's exactly what we strive to maintain every day. And what happens is, if you reach out to someone on the worst day of their life and you don't provide, you know, the utmost level of respect and dignity, that can really change the outcome or the future for someone for days, weeks, and months ahead, especially if it was a crisis or a situation that had a grim outcome where someone dies. And unfortunately, with things that have been progressing in the Commonwealth lately, not just in our Metro Boston area and our other 15 cities and towns, we've been experiencing a lot of death lately with the opioid crisis. And if we don't treat family members with respect and communicate and talk to patients and explain what we're doing and how we're maintaining to save them or provide a service, it can really emotionally affect them, and that might lead to a complaint being launched. And thankfully, our service doesn't have many complaints launched, because we strive to maintain clinical excellence and a strong level of customer service, because we train our staff to maintain that level of humanity.
Of course.
Because that could be their family, and we want everybody to be treated with a certain level of respect.
And I know a bit later on we're going to talk a little bit more about the opioid issue specifically, but when we think of things that are barriers to people seeking treatment, what we hear a lot anecdotally and data-driven information is the stigma that's attached. So I think, as you mentioned, it's really important to realize the level of impact your interactions have. So as someone who has had interactions with Cataldo, I do appreciate the level of professionalism that has been displayed through each and every one of those. So it's a very valuable service to the city, and the good relationships you've built with our police and fire departments certainly help to make all of those situations work towards a more successful outcome.
No, absolutely. And, we really value the relationships we have because any good business, whether it's an ambulance service or whether it's, some other form of business, everything's predicated on building a strong foundation and good relationships with the community and the people that are using your service. And that's what we try to do every day. And that's always been the Cataldo's model when they started back in 1977.
That's great. One thing I did want to talk about, we had information about the call volume and the number of transports. So I was a little surprised by this. I don't know that I had a number in mind, but when I looked at it, it just seemed like a really large number. So information that was provided to me showed 8,907 responses with 5,495 transports.
Yeah,
that seems like a lot of action.
It's a lot of action. It's a busy city. We're booming, and a lot of it is, we have a lot of people that travel. We have critical infrastructure in the city of Somerville, right? We have the commuter rail. We have colleges. We have people traveling because you guys have some pretty exciting things in your city to go, different venues, Davis Square, et cetera. And it's going to be busy at certain times. But with those transports, every time someone called 911, that 8,900 that you mentioned, I think it was 8,907, those are all calls for 911 that an ambulance was dispatched. The 5,495 calls, those transports, those were for a myriad of different reasons, whether it was a cardiac arrest, an injury, an act of violence, anything. The others could have been canceled by the police because when a first responder arrived, police or fire partners, they said, cancel the ambulance, this isn't an EMS-related incident. Or it could have warranted in a refusal. When we go to the scene, we evaluate, we treat and release, and somebody signs a refusal stating they don't want to go to the hospital. So that's where that almost 3,000 calls that aren't listed as transports, that's kind of where that comes from.
It's very interesting information. I mean, you just, I feel like when you go about your day throughout the city, you see an ambulance, you see those sorts of things, but when you realize how often people are seeking those services and just the situations that happen to people every single day of their lives, like I said, not necessarily the big clip you see on the news, which, thankfully doesn't seem to happen too often, but like a severe car accident or something, to that level. But you realize just the everyday occurrences that happen that people end up needing to have services from an ambulance.
Oh, absolutely. And you'd be surprised because sometimes it's not just the worst day in somebody's life. I mean, they could have a minor injury, and we say minor injury to them, it may be serious, but if you dislocate or break an ankle and you need the ambulance that day, and most people are like, oh, I'll struggle it and take a ride. It doesn't matter what you need the ambulance for. We're happy to take you to the hospital no matter what. And the call volume's elevated, unfortunately, because a lot of people feel that calling 911 may be an appropriate resource to get into the emergency room faster. And sometimes that's actually a wrong idea, and people misunderstand the service. So we don't discourage anybody from calling 911, but for common colds and flu-like symptoms, some people do utilize 911 for that as a vehicle to get to the hospital because they feel they'll be seen quicker. And there's a triage process at the emergency room, and that doesn't always happen. You go in the waiting room, and but that's okay. I mean, you know what? If you need an ambulance, you call us. We're going to be there.
Right. And I think that's kind of the level of expectation people are in fields such as that is when you're needed, you're always responding. So, it doesn't matter. It's the middle of the night. It's inclement weather. It's the sort of thing that provides comfort and security to community members, I think. Understanding that if something bad happens, police, fire, ambulance, everyone is coming to help make the best out of the situation.
Absolutely. We're a 24/7 operation. We provide, special events coverage. We're there for the community and for the people that need us. So when you call, we are coming, regardless of the situation.
Right. You did bring with you some items here today. So I know we are accompanied by a friend over there. So I believe you had talked about wanting to do hands-only CPR demonstration?
I do. I would like to do a hands-only or hands-on CPR demonstration only just for the general public. It's just a basic understanding. When, one thing I want to get into before we start that demonstration is that when you call 911 in our area, our emergency medical dispatchers will provide pre-arrival instructions based on protocols that we have. And one of them may be to give someone with chest pain aspirin, or if someone's having chest pain, say, is there a defibrillator around? Because you never know in seconds it could progress into a cardiac arrest or a sudden death.
Right.
So we always like to give those pre-arrival instructions, and sometimes anxiety or adrenaline can really overcome somebody. So we try to have our trained dispatchers up in Cataldo calm everybody down and have a workflow of giving instructions. And one of them might be just to remind someone how to use the defibrillator. So today what I wanted to do was just to show someone a basic show the public and whoever's watching our program basic instructions of how to put on a defibrillator, because we do have defibrillators in the city, right, Kathy? We have them in our libraries, our schools. So there is public access defibrillation, and I think it's so important because statistically, not only in our communities, but from the American Heart Association's data, defibrillation is one of the things that saves lives tremendously, and high quality CPR. And it's not so much, you know, everyone says, oh, I have to do mouth to mouth. It's not. It's actually the chest compressions that saves people's lives. It's the chest compressions uninterrupted, and I'm happy to do that demonstration whenever you think it's appropriate to do so.
Sure. I mean, it's interesting you mentioned that because we've seen the change. I'm thinking years back when I had undergone first aid CPR training, and you learned mouth to mouth, and you know the Staying Alive song and all of that. But the switch now to hands-only CPR, and then understanding the importance of the use of a defibrillator. I mean, I know there's one located in the building that I work at, and I know I get the reminder each month to go make certain that everything is up to date, and you know, the pads have expiration dates and batteries have expiration dates, and it really is that level of accountability that if you ever need these things, the burden is on you to make certain that things are ready to go. So it's a responsibility, you know, all staff take very seriously who are overseeing that, but knowing it's there as an additional resource, I think, gives you a slight measure of ease.
No, absolutely, and I think it's very important for all ages. I have an 8-year-old niece, and she knows how to do CPR. She knows how to put the defibrillator on. She knows how to clear it, and it's just from training her. And my family's trained how to use it because, you know, because of my job, and I'm passionate about it. But a lot of EMS, fire, police families, they try to train their children young, obviously the value of 911.
Of course.
But we want to let everybody know that even in the city and in most communities in the Metro Boston area, our surrounding communities in the UASI group, you know, Everett, Chelsea, Revere, there's defibrillators in Dunkin' Donuts, in any health club. It's required by the Commonwealth. And the Department of Public Health has really made a good stride in maintaining their accountability and ensuring that it's regulated, that there's defibrillators where people can go down and suffer a sudden cardiac death. So it's really important that people pay attention, because all you have to do is turn on the machine.
Right. Walks you right through it. I love that.
You know, it walks you through it, and you just need to remember to always stay calm and you know, and just follow the instructions.
I think now would be a great time to see the demonstration.
All right, absolutely.
Thank you so much
no problem.
getting this set up. Again, I think it's really helpful information to provide, particularly the fact, pardon me, that they are available in so many public locations. I think it's important for someone who may see it attached to the wall and maybe not really know all about it to understand how it works. So walk us through.
Absolutely. And, you know, I do want to mention there's different types of models and types of defibrillators out there. This particular model happens to be a Zoll AED Plus series. And again, there's monotronics, there's different types. We at Cataldo Ambulance use Zoll products. They're very self-explanatory. If you could just zoom in here, it asks, are you okay? Make sure you call 911. Open up and take out the pads. If you're nervous and you can't remember what to do, the pads have a demonstration on them, exactly how to deploy them on the chest. And then you just turn the machine on, and then you go from there. So this device technically can go behind someone's head if you want to put their head in a neutral position, but we don't typically use that. So for example, I'm going to do the hands-only demonstration for now, because if the defibrillator is on its way, let's say someone passes out in the hallway down from Kathy's office, and I yell, Kathy, call 911, go get the defibrillator, I'm going to start CPR. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to expose the person's chest. And I'm going to make sure that you know, they're not breathing, they're not coughing, they're not moving. Find my landmark in between the chest. And Kathy mentioned earlier the Staying Alive song. I'm not going to sing it because I don't have a good singing voice, and I don't think that that's what we're going to do. But if you could just think it in your head, we want you to remember harder, deeper, faster, because good circulation is what saves lives, okay? We go circulation, airway, and breathing. But for this premise, just to show you guys hands-only CPR for the public and how they could save and make a better outcome for the community if you're faced with an emergency like this, this is great. So while the defibrillator's coming, we call 911, you get help on the way, and if you get tired, ask someone to jump in and help you out. But you want to get your hands in the middle of the chest after it's exposed, and you want to start pumping harder, deeper, and faster, about 2 inches down in the center of the chest, and you keep pumping. Now, obviously, if the person that you're working on starts coughing and moving, and they're saying, ow, then maybe they are not in cardiac arrest. But most likely, if that's the case, you want to continue harder, deeper, faster compressions to provide circulation to the brain and the vital organs to keep them alive until help gets there. Now, I'm going to go ahead and pretend and say that CPR is still being performed, and I'm going to go ahead and take out this package here. There's an arrow, and remember, when people are really nervous, they might be fumbling. We want you just to remember to take a deep breath. Help will be on the way shortly, and these two...
I think that's important to continue to mention. You know, as these situations happen, I think anxiety, as you said, can get the best of a person. Of
course.
Adrenaline is flowing. But I think understanding, you know, this ability to kind of walk through things and to really, as you said, there are arrows, there are demonstration information. I think really understanding that people have the capacity to do this, and of course encouraging people to sign up for CPR, first aid, AED classes in advance of that. I mean, it's basic knowledge that if everyone had, would certainly help to ease that anxiety if it was required for a situation.
Before I put the pad on, I just want to show, again, every defibrillator is different, but if you turn on this machine, it's going to start talking to you.
Adult pads. Unit okay. Stay calm. Check responsiveness. Call for help.
Are you okay? No response.
Stay calm. Check responsiveness. Call for help.
So help's been called, there's no response. The machine's going to tell us what to do.
Airway.
So the pads, one pad goes
Check breathing. Give
on the right upper breast, underneath the clavicle or the breastbone. And then over here, we're going to go on the left side, just below the left nipple. Okay? So the pads have been attached. And as you,
Attach defib pads to patient's bare chest.
so that's been done.
And the machine gives you the time to get these things
Attach
managed.
defib pads to patient's bare chest.
Okay, so the machine, I just shut it off because it's a live device, and I'm going to go ahead and verbalize what the machine's going to do. It's going to say analyzing heart rhythm. It's going to tell you if a shock is advised or if no shock is advised. Those are the only two things it's going to tell you to do. If, in fact, a shock is advised, there is a button that is going to make a tone, and you go ahead and push it. And before you push the button, when it says analyzing, shock advised, clear the patient, I'm clear, you're clear. Nobody can touch the patient, okay? Because it's going to deploy a shock. And then you go ahead and you push the flashing red button. A shock is delivered. You're going to see a mild jolt in the patient, and a shock's been delivered. And as soon as it is, you want to get right back on the chest, and you want to start CPR. Remember, harder, deeper, faster, good compressions, because we're trying to circulate blood and oxygen to the brain and the vital organs of the body to keep them alive until help gets there. And then when we get there, the paramedics get there, we'll provide advanced airway and advanced life support, advanced cardiac life support, and do our best to try to make it a good outcome for the patient that just suddenly collapsed.
Excellent, thank you so much. One other area that we want to touch upon is the opioid issue. As we know, it is not unique to Somerville, the state of Massachusetts, or the country of the United States. Opioid use, misuse, abuse is on the rise everywhere. We see changes in people misusing prescription meds that are prescribed for a valid health issue. We see, unfortunately, an increase in the number of heroin overdoses that are happening. And Somerville has been impacted by all of that. As a first responder, as you know, along with police and fire, all of you have the capacity to deploy Narcan. And I know we have some demonstrations here that I was hoping you could talk a little bit about.
Sure. So naloxone is the trade name of the medication. It goes by Narcan. And in 2017, 2016, it's actually probably one of the most used medications across the country. As you just mentioned, statistically, it is used prevalently for opioid overdoses. And we use a ton of it, not only in Somerville, but more so than we ever have. In our organization, we get calls for a cardiac arrest. And what happens when you use Narcan, I just want to get into the quick physiology of it. Opiates depress the central nervous system, which control the brain, the spinal cord, and the diaphragm. And when someone uses heroin, whether they snort it or shoot it, it depresses the respiratory system, and you stop breathing. And when you stop breathing, you're not getting oxygen to the brain and the heart, and then the heart subsequently will stop if it's not treated accordingly. So thanks to Governor Charlie Baker declaring the opioidemia crisis a state of emergency, local pharmacies in the area in the Commonwealth are, without a prescription, giving patients that with no questions asked, no questions asked, and the pharmacist is giving them a demonstration on how to use it to keep it, because there's a lot of families that are struggling with this. Even people that are on methadone protocols are still using and self-medicating. So I just want to show you what's available and do a demonstration.
Great.
At Cataldo Ambulance, our basic ambulances carry a auto-injected nasal Narcan device. It's 4 milligrams of nasal Narcan. It's a nasal Narcan spray, and it's pre-deployed. It's pre-filled rather, and we just put this up the nair or the nostril of someone that's not breathing. We tear the package open, and I'm not going to do it because this is a live medication, as is these. But I just want to talk to you about, there's 10 boxes of Narcan here, and if you multiply that by 15, that's the amount of doses of Narcan we gave in 2016. In 2016, in the city of Somerville, between Cataldo Ambulance alone, we gave 149 doses of Narcan. That doesn't include what the police have given, that doesn't include what the fire department has given, and in some of our vital statistics and data that my chief operating officer, Ron Caranto, gave me, we've even had a couple instances where a student has given another student Narcan out of a first aid kit. So I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate it. So this Narcan will come from either CVS, Walgreens, or wherever it gets acquired from. This is a Bristojet. This yellow cap gets popped off. This purple cap gets popped off. This marries the end of this, and it twists in clockwise, just enough till it stops. Then this is called a nasal atomizer, okay? This is going to go up the nostril of the victim that is not breathing. And if you're not sure if someone is having an opioid overdose and you have Narcan available in your first aid kit and you're unsure, it's okay to go ahead and administer it, because it's not going to hurt the patient. It's only going to help. This will twist on counterclockwise to the end of this, okay? Now I'm just going to demonstrate a little bit to show you what it does. If I push, I'm just going to give a little bit, it sprays up into the nose, okay? So what we do is there is 2 milligrams of Narcan in this, and if the patient's unresponsive, typical signs of somebody not breathing is they're not moving, they may have abnormal breathing that's lower than a normal rate, like they're struggling, they're gasping for air, their color is pale, they may be blue, which we call cyanotic. So what we're going to go ahead and do is go ahead and tilt their head back a little bit, take the tip of this soft styrofoam nasal atomizer and inject it into the nostril, and we're going to go ahead and spray. Okay? So we just administered nasal Narcan, and that's going to go ahead into the mucous membranes in the back of the neck, in the back of the throat, and that's going to absorb the Narcan and get it into the system. Now, at any time, if you give the Narcan and the patient's still not responsive and you don't think that their heart is still beating or they may have completely stopped breathing, we ask that you start CPR until the ambulance gets there. And again, that is a life-saving measure that you can take for anybody. And we ask if you see something, you say something, you call and report it. You let us come there and make that decision. Even if you're driving by in your car and you see someone that may not be responsive, please call 911, because you could really save somebody's life.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I mean, I think it's very different hearing the information, reading the information, and actually seeing the demonstration of it. So as we come to an end, I want to thank you so much and express appreciation for the work that you do for our community, as well as your willingness to come on today and talk about issues that aren't easy to hear about, but understanding how important it is that community members have this information. So if people who are watching are looking for additional information, trying to find out about CPR, community education, have questions about this, what's the best way they should follow up?
They can follow up with us at www.cataldoambulance.com. They can get in touch with our clinical education department, and we will set something up for first aid, CPR, AED training, and certainly if someone's interested in a demonstration on nasal Narcan, we're happy to do that for the community, not just in Somerville, but for anybody that's watching our program.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. I did want to just briefly mention one area that you also provide support is to our annual domestic violence vigil. So I'm hopeful that maybe you'll be able to come back on in the fall along with other staff and talk a little bit about the importance of that as a community engagement opportunity.
Absolutely. We have a very diverse company and organization, and that's something that we're very happy to help with. And we've been involved with you now for several years, and we absolutely love that opportunity to help you out.
Excellent. Thank you again so much for coming on, and I look forward to connecting again in the fall.
Thank you so much, Nancy.
Thank you. As always, I'd like to thank the production crew, Joe Constantine and Steve DiCarlo. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next month.